Today I'm speaking with Rich Lindberg, a cybersecurity leader whose journey into tech began not in a lab or a classroom, but as the curious kid in the house always called on to fix the VCR. From manually flipping switches on a hand-soldered computer built by his father to walking into a Microsoft boot camp on a whim, Rich's story is anything but linear. He didn't plan to land in cyber. In fact, his first jobs were people-facing, service-driven roles. But it was that very blend of technical curiosity and a genuine love for human connection that caught the attention of industry veterans who saw potential in him and brought him into the cybersecurity world. In this conversation, Rich shares the powerful impact of mentorship, how he learned to thrive through change, and why staying curious is the most underrated career strategy. If you're someone wondering how to pivot into tech, or how to lead with both heart and skill, this episode is for you.
Appreciate you taking the time to kind of talk with us today. Again, the podcast is really just about kind of wanting to inspire young minds and people who want to grow in technology and necessarily become leaders. So if you wouldn't mind, kind of share with me how you got involved in technology, one and in the wonderful world of cybersecurity, what led you down that path, and how'd you get here to where you are today?
Sure. Thanks, James. My journey really started when I was that person who was always tapped to change the time on the VCR, you know, as a kid. Just being curious about how things worked and applying that curiosity wherever I saw it. And at the time, there was a lot of transformation to more digitalization and affordable computers. I mean, that's where I started when computers were not in every household, and they started to rapidly become so in, say, the 90s with services like America Online and CompuServe and other things like that just sort of transformed what it meant to have digital reach. And we're going through another transformation now where people are getting internet service more connected through the last couple of years have really been rolled out to a lot of the country that didn't really have it. So, these circles come around, and you just have to get on one. But it really was just being curious and tinkering. One day, I went in and just did. I like people a lot, so I went and did jobs that involved interfacing with people. I didn't really get into technology at first, which is funny because my father was a programmer, and we had technology at our house. We had he even soldered together his own computer back
Oh, wow.
back in the day. And so when we started a computer, we had to flip a bunch of switches. It didn't just to press a button and it came on. So we really learned how it worked at the nitty gritty level. And anyway, like I said, I went into service, but then I just thought one day, I really like tech. And so I took a certification. I slapped down a credit card and I took a boot camp, a 1-week boot camp on Microsoft technology to the MCSE kind of path. And at the end of that week, not only was I was so engaged with the class, not only did the training center actually ask to interview me as a potential employee, because I like people, I like talking to people, and I like tech. And so for whatever reason, they reached out to me. I didn't take that job, but I went and started at a call center for MCI at the time, and so took a contract because I don't know, I knew the tech and I could support what they needed supporting. And I just got my start doing that. So I didn't start in cyber at all. I started in enterprise IT because I was just following the curiosity. What changed me over to enterprise to cybersecurity was one day I moved through a couple contracts and jobs, and I was working for a telco. I was working at one of the bells, and we were being merged back into Ma Bell, and they I was supporting servers and desktops and like the whole enterprise at where I was, but I was put in charge of the project that was going to eliminate some of our departments because we were going to get merged back into the MOP-L. And there was a services team because we were a technical division of the Bells, doing router deployments and firewall deployments and all that stuff. And they had a small security consulting group that did services out into, Fortune everything, including, Fortune 50. So they saw something in me and liked the service I provided as an internal resource to them as internal customers, and said, you should come work with us. Your job's going to go away. You'd be great at this. And so I was the beneficiary of three guys, Art, Ray, and Jan, awesome guys, still out there today doing work. And they took me under their wing, they built their own best practices and taught them to me, and let me, learn and fail and succeed in all the things. So I'm forever grateful to them. But ultimately, it has to do with just me being curious and putting energy and being engaged in whatever's in front of me, and not just expecting things to, happen or not. So that's how I started. That's a longer answer than I thought it would be.
It's great to hear that the upcoming. You mentioned a couple of people though, and we probably consider those people as mentors to your career. How much do you think that experience of having a mentor kind of made the difference in your career path going forward?
It opened a door that into cyber in particular, because we were building labs and again learning nitty gritty, and I was working with Linux before Linux was friendly. People would say it's not friendly today. It's super friendly today. We were having to edit configuration files to make graphics work and all that other stuff previously. But the mentorship made all the difference in being successful in this new path. It was like getting enrolled in another boot camp where they could just take me through and have it one-on-one. So, but we were explaining new concepts to enterprises that they didn't know about, and it was a great ride. But mentoring is everything, and it's changed my outlook. To your question, it helped bring me direct success because I was willing to put in the work. But it also changed my attitude about what is necessary in our industry, because today we have such a shortfall of talent. People that, there's jobs. You want a job, learn some stuff about cyber, and you don't even have to do IT necessarily. I think it was valuable, but you can go right into it if you have the right basics, these days. But anyway, I think that we that have been in the industry have a duty to make it a little easier. Because if you just leave it up to companies, they'll say, I need somebody with a whole bunch of experience, and I'll hire them. But the problem is we've exhausted all the people that have that experience already employed. And so we need to bring people up into the ranks. So my paradigm that I talk about when I get together with other leaders is it should be a kind of like a union ish situation where you have the stratification of like a master, a journeyman, an apprentice, that kind of a system. And whatever tier you're on, it's your job to pull the next tier up, and their success is part of your success or failure. So a journeyman has to be responsible for an apprentice and so on. So they have to continue to pass down the skills and also have that direct mentorship. I'm bringing on a head count this year, and that's exactly what I intend to do, is mentor them as a point of succession planning. I want to bring them up. I think it's gonna be about a 6-year journey. They've got a strong person that I think is gonna join us, has a strong technical background in IT, but not cyber, but it's teachable. there's transferable skills. And with that direct mentorship, I think it's going to be very successful and an accelerated path for this person. But whoever comes and joins, we'll have the same attitude. We'll have the same attitude of how do we make them successful? Because if they're not successful, we didn't do our job right. Of course, they have to put in the work and effort, but we have to create the opportunity.
That's really cool. When I started in IT, I didn't really have any idea where I wanted to go. I started a similar path to you. I started in the help desk area, worked for a commercial chain that helped like a lot of restaurants around. And I knew, similar to you, I was the type of guy that was able to program my, mom and dad's VCR. Was able to, the person that they called when they had any type of technical problem whatsoever. I went into support. I got burnt out on support. And because I got burnt out, that's when I actually started moving to cybersecurity. But I never thought of going into that field if my manager at the time didn't kind of recommend and kind of say, hey, I think you would actually, be good at this. I never thought of anything cybersecurity. I always thought of like hackers and have to be somewhat of a hacker myself in order to excel in that field, like the penetration testing, the external testing, the red versus blue team. And I don't think if I didn't have that one manager to kind of said, hey, try this, or even kind of thought that I could possibly do that, that I don't know if I would actually go into that field or not.
I forgot. I didn't bring a hoodie. I'm sorry. I be a hacker, but
there you go.
I can bring something to the table.
That's a perfect, literally black hat. I never actually saw something like that before. That's really cool. I actually want one of those hats. Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah, if I didn't have that, which kind of, and it was definitely a change in my career path when I went, because one, I didn't know anything about cyber. And I'm not sure if that was similar in your case when you transitioned into that field of cybersecurity from where you were for like just doing enterprise technology at the time, or enterprise IT. Every career has obstacles. Could you share, or if you can think of anything of like one of the toughest challenges that you faced either during that transition or during your time where you are today in IT, and how'd you get through that?
Well, you brought up the idea of not having thought about cyber, and I didn't think about cyber. I just thought about here's more tech to play with, more things to learn. So I didn't really categorize it. There's so much today, even in IT, but certainly in cyber, so many specializations because there's so much to learn and to know to become a working professional, to be qualified to do credible work, not just to sort of be in a position. Challenges for me were, I don't know. I mean, there was so much to do. There's so much work to be had. There still is, that it's being considerate about what jobs to take at that time. So that at that era, and it's probably still true, but it was especially true back then, where recruiters, contracting, headhunters, all the people who connected you with a job, if you didn't have your own network to talk to, they didn't really understand any of it. It was just, it's a computer.
Yep.
And so they had keywords, and I think we're still in that situation to a large degree. But all they knew was what you made at your last job, and it was doing a thing, doing this, doing X or Y or Z. And so you were kind of only as good as your rate. If you earned a good rate, then you must be good. That's literally how they did it. And if you weren't making a good rate, you wouldn't be offered the higher tier jobs because they presumed you didn't have the skills because you weren't making a good rate. It was this interesting cycle that had nothing to do with your technical qualifications because they didn't know how to technically qualify you. And I think from an initial getting past the resume machines, we were still having those kind of struggles. And I would really encourage people to get involved with networks, get involved with communities, CTL or SACA or ISSA or any kind of professional interest group that falls within your area. They're out there for everybody, whether you're a software developer, IT administrator, or cyber person, whatever. So my struggle was being thoughtful about what jobs I took, and going without work sometimes if the contract, because I actually deliberately went into a contracting career early on. I thought I could be exposed to so many things instead of getting a job and looking at the same 6 computers and 2 routers or whatever for six
Gotcha.
years.
Mm.
That's fine, but and there's nothing wrong with it. But what if I could go from place to place to place and see, massive storage arrays and servers and clusters and firewalls? Oh my. And that's what I did. And even when I did take full-time employment, it was with consulting companies, so I could continue to charge in and see a whole bunch of new stuff. So my experience is a little bit like dog year experience, because have seen all those different contexts and projects and is accelerated fashion versus somebody who's been in the same role doing the same job for however many years. And not to minimize their experience at all, just saying that because of my exposure to so much that was active projects, I really bring a lot to the table in terms of lessons learned and best practices. And for companies that are small or Fortune 10 even. So but
Would you say
yeah,
that's your
biggest challenge was
curiosity
just
side?
figuring out what I was
That
going to do.
would you say that's your curiosity side why you kind of went to that contract worked in the beginning to be able to kind of get exposed to all that technology versus just kind of being like just a tech support where you're just sitting in front of a computer for like 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week?
Yeah, and I think the problem that people coming up now will have is that because there's so much to do, they won't know what what to latch onto, what path to latch onto. And there are
I
some good
agree.
training. There's some good training resources out there that offer kind of like let's liken it to a college curriculum where there's a series that they need to go through, that introductory kind of materials and more advanced materials. But it's kind of like, doesn't isn't presented that way, but it's presented as technologies, but it effectively is like that. And so you can build towards a job with some of these training resources, and they will tell you what you need to know. Or you can get involved with formal training programs that can be quite expensive, but they're really good at some places. So it all comes down to how much effort you're willing to put in. Because if you're not willing to put in effort, technology is not the job for you. Maybe a service level where you're doing application support or help desk to, again, which is mostly application support. But after that, if you're not going to put in effort, I don't know if I'd recommend it.
Well said. Yep. I'm a student of the game myself. Kind of what I do. I don't necessarily do the schooling much, but I'm a tinkerer to my core. So anything new technology wise, if I see something a little bit, AI is the big buzzword, right? So making my own like AI server cluster for my own like language models, just to kind of see if I can get it working. Any type of like AI agents or anything cybersecurity wise, you hear about onion servers and get a server up to kind of see how it works, or was a server just kind of do the penetration testing. And it's all just because I just kind of want to see how it works and tinker with it. And, I learn from that mistakes and getting the infrastructure up and running. And then I take that and either try to apply that towards a business sense and how I can excel my career and further pass from the experiences that I've had this kind of tinkering around and trying things. I mean, YouTube is also a great source. I YouTube everything. Like it's one of those free kind of marketing sources of a bunch of knowledge and also wrong knowledge too. So you got to know how to differentiate between the two. But to your point, there's a lot of places and a lot of things there where you can actually get knowledge to excel your career.
And what you just mentioned is important as well, doing your own home lab stuff, because it's great to get experience at a company doing X or Y or Z. But if that's opportunity is not available, then there's so much that's available to build as a home project. I mean, I've got 2 server class motherboard machines that are built for AI purposes in my own lab. So, I don't need to do that in my career, but I want to do that because I continue to be curious. I'm a lifelong learner, and I will tinker. Even
Exactly.
though I'm a business leader today, I still keep my technical chops.
Exactly. That kind of brings up a next question, as you mentioned, as a leader today, but as a tinkerer. In the past, technology people mostly like the tech experts, like we're the person that they were called. Now we're in a little bit of a different role where we're more like business strategy and we're not necessarily in the weeds, like setting up servers, setting up the infrastructure. How do you navigate kind of like that shift to one, to feel that you're like, making a difference as far as being able to do projects. And that's how I fill my bucket to be able to do cool things and innovate versus kind of staying in meetings all day, if you know what I mean. How do you navigate that?
Often when they get experience and they get promoted, they may become a team lead or have a formal manager title or director, or, come up to these different tiers. And certainly at the earlier end, it's because they're very good at a task. This happens in all things, not just technology. It could be accounting. You become the lead for accounts payable, or you become the lead for the support desk, or you become the lead for the server group, whatever, because you've shown that you've got really strong knowledge and you've got the personal skills to work with people, your internal team, your external customers, whoever you serve. And what you need to do is as you are promoted like that, you need to recognize that you are there to leverage your experience and let the team be the force multiplier. And where managers fail or leaders fail is because they don't let go and they want to keep being involved with the nitty gritty. And they may even say, I could do that in 10 times faster, and maybe it's true, but your value is now to build clear, effective process so that others can succeed prescriptively, and let them do it, and then you continue to scale. But when you get up to, so that's where people really struggle, is that in that transition. But then when you get to past a director level, for sure, then you end up in a whole different paradigm, and your value continues to be, I know how that's supposed to go. I can evaluate whether that project plan makes sense in terms of time, level of effort, resources, etc. But I still need you guys and girls to do it. But my job now is to capture value and be able to speak to the business about why we're here, why we serve the business, and how we serve the business, and put a value on it. That's the thing in IT in general, but cyber specifically, that a lot of heads of security struggle with because they don't speak business. I actually have a business degree as well as a comp sci. I was a comp sci major, but I also got a business degree. And so I'm pretty practiced anyway at transforming bits and bytes and propeller head specs into what does this mean to the business, and how does it give us return on investment? How does it protect our revenue streams? How does it give us access to new top line revenue streams? And of course, what everybody thinks about is how does it prevent us from having harm that then costs us money, whether that's like a ransomware attack or just an outage. But really, there's a lot of different use cases where cyber can be a competitive differentiator in the marketplace for a person's company to become the preferred vendor of whatever it is they make or sell, because of their strong privacy and data security controls, as well as supply chain. Supply chain's a big topic in the last couple of years, and it's not going to go away.
Agreed. For people who kind of are going up into that IT leadership role or technology leadership role, cybersecurity, whatever leadership role that they are coming up to, is there any advice that you can give that maybe you have wished that you have gotten earlier in your career?
Because I was consulting a lot, I was always talking about business value and why something was worth doing.
There is a lot of value in that, I will say, what you said. I don't really think very many people think of the business aspect of it because it's mostly just technical minds and more of the break fixes instead of kind of like the longer vision of that.
Yeah, and also because of consulting, I had to build bridges between departments that didn't have currently relations and they needed them in order to get projects done. And because of consulting, I both would say things that need to be said, but also where internal resources might not want to because they were afraid of repercussions or thought it wasn't politically wise or whatever. But I could come in and just clear the air and help people move forward. But that's not the majority of people. The majority of people are internal, like I am today. And I think that what I would say is that you need to be fearless, and it can be hard if the culture is not accommodating or the culture is self-deluding and not otherwise honest with itself, so that they don't want to hear the tough conversations. And then I would ask yourself, if you're in a place like that, why would you stay? If they're gonna not help you thrive, because when you thrive, the company thrives. And if people are stuck with living in fear in companies as a leadership team, and don't let the individual contributors succeed, uh, think about building more skills, doing more home labs, doing classes, building networks, personal networks, and get connected to other jobs and just move on and leave behind managers that don't want, for whatever reason, they just want you to do the thing, do one task and not really thrive. And of course, that's valuable because you were hired for it, but the world changes around us, and if companies don't change with it, if you're not at least adding ideas, if not doing more, then the company is going to stagnate. Your job may be at risk anyway, along with everybody else's. But also, it's not satisfying, and I think so. You have to be willing to stand up. I've had to stand up to some really intense personalities in my career because they just didn't care and wanted to even take us down harmful paths, risky paths, because they were indifferent. And so what I had to think through the answer to your question, but it's to take to heart the idea of being a guardian and stepping up and going towards danger and say, no, we need to rethink that. Now, how you have those conversations and learning soft skills, as they're called, interpersonal skills, matters, and you need to tackle that. I mean, anything from going to a comedy school, learn how to read people and to be able to riff off of a conversation, to more formal writing kind of skills, or Toastmasters. Go to Toastmasters. These other things you wouldn't think about and aren't you often provided by a company. Sometimes they are, actually, but often not. It's up to you. This is your life to live and your career to have. People aren't often going to spoon feed you, so take it by the horns. Go for it.
The fearless side comes to mind. There's quite a few times in my career where, you're told to do something, and then maybe not necessarily agree with it or not like it, but just, a lot of people are like, yes, men. You're like, okay, sure, get it done. Like, don't ask questions and just kind of go with it, even though you probably know it's not the best way to kind of move forward for the company, or it's not the most cost effective way, whatever it may be. And I agree with you. Like, you shouldn't be afraid to challenge, ask questions. You don't have to be like super defined or like a rebel in that aspect, though, but just ask questions, propose a different scenario, and don't be afraid to do that. And if they, to your point, if they don't see the value in that, then that's probably not the place you should be or excel your career. Or maybe think of it might be time to look for a different opportunity. As you said earlier in the podcast, like cybersecurity, there's so many jobs in cybersecurity right now, and a lot of money kind of into it. That's good advice.
I'd like to actually add one more thing, is that
Please.
when you become a subject matter expert on different aspects of the job, different technologies, it's also very easy to feel like you're the smartest person in the room And you need to, earlier I mentioned there are ways in which you can be fearless and challenge an idea, but that doesn't mean you need to talk down to people or talk past people. You need to connect with people, and you also need to have humility, because there's a lot of times where maybe you weren't told all the aspects of the larger project, and you don't have all the context or the constraints. So you might have a great idea like within the bubble that you're given, and you might be right, but one, you don't want to come off like an arrogant person, and you want to be a team player, and you maybe ask a question saying, I'm not sure why. Is there a reason why we're doing it that way? Because I have a concern that we're missing an opportunity to be more efficient in our project and with our technology, or save some money if we do it this other way. So you're asking the question, you're not telling them, because you may not have all the facts.
Yep.
And also, people don't like know-it-alls anyway. So just have the humility to know that you're all in the same boat. And you can ask questions to challenge ideas, as opposed to, just standing there and thinking you're all that. So
Exactly.
how you do it matters. But also keeping quiet, yeah, you can do that. You can just come to your desk, do your work. At the end of the day, put your pencil down. Obviously, you put your documents away, because everybody should have secure document policies and clean desk policies, but that's a different topic. And leave at 5 o'clock, and then come back at 8 a.m. the next morning, and rinse and repeat on that hamster wheel. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in cyber, a lot of people don't know what questions to ask. And so you have to challenge, you have to ask the questions and bring it up. Otherwise, you're really not being the subject matter expert you think you are anyway.
Agreed. And is there anything from your career path, uh, anything you would change from where you went to where you are currently?
Well, my curiosity, so like a lot of success stories, I like to listen to this other podcast called How I Built This. And it's a podcast that's stories of household name companies that everybody's heard of, and how they got started and what they went through, whether it was personality struggles, financial struggles, distribution struggles, whatever the struggles were. And one common thing is that there's always luck. It seems like right place, right time kind of situations. And you have to be willing to jump at opportunities. So your question is, would I change anything? And because I was willing to take leaps and not just sit idly in my safe known situation, I was willing to jump into something new. I got to do a lot of things. I've owned my own company. When the dot-com bubble burst, I started a company because I had a Rolodex from 5,000 person global consulting firm that serviced Fortune 500, and I went to have two T1s and a couple server racks in my garage, and we had fax lines and PBXs and web servers and all the trappings of a Fortune 500 company, because we were the ones who built that stuff for them, and professional marketing and all the things. And we did consulting for a few years until the economy got better, the company served its purpose, and we all moved on, and it was fine. And I had a great time doing that. I built lines of business for other companies, product manufacturers, service groups, whatever, some small, some really big. And those businesses, especially the big ones, really still exist today. So I did it well. So I've had those opportunities to, and I've transformed process for the U.S. military. I would happen to be with a central command and global command, and changed the way they did it, and made it much more efficient and more effective. And it all had to do with cyber and safety for the warfighter. So I've had and there was more, but the point is that I've had all these opportunities because I was willing to jump at it. And where that's left me is I went through a period of, I feel like I've checked the boxes. I kind of jumped around the ladder. I didn't have to climb the ladder.
Sure.
So I didn't care what my job was because I continued to follow my curiosity. And there was a period maybe going back to that, you're only good as what you make kind of idea, but I was doing individual contributor kind of work because it was interesting. I got to continue to play with all these emerging technologies. I mean, I've touched so much tech because I was willing to do that, and it wouldn't really compute with anybody. Why? Well, if you made up to these levels, why would you go down, quote unquote, down? And I just didn't look at it that way. I looked at it like this is a new adventure. And so then I had to kind of climb back up the ladder a little bit because I was not being entrepreneurial as I had been in the past. Um, and it felt a little weird, and I just people, I don't know, uh, leaders have paradigms about somebody coming up in from the individual contributor level and not thinking or taking to effect that I had to worry about payroll for people and paying bills for the company and all that other stuff.
Sure. In some instances, it's a lot more risque than others. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I would I do something differently? I don't know that I would, but I recognize that because it doesn't comport with what other people have in their head as far as career pathing, it made me have to kind of re-justify jobs I've already done because they had no idea I had that background. And so I don't know what
Gotcha.
that means to answer your question. But it's the one thing that I scratch my head over because I look at people and they make silly choices, and sometimes I just need to let them have their silly choices, um, because they either own the responsibility, so that's absolutely appropriate. But I want to help them out and say something. But um, it's a weird situation.
It's a kind of that situation where they want something, they're so gun ho about the thing they want, even though you know it's probably not the best for them. But then you're in that kind of like middle gray area where, like, well, it's what they want, but just kind of you do the thing.
Well, people have to grow on their own,
Sure.
and it's like having kids. You have to, some things, but you don't always say some things, not because you're not willing to be fearless, but because they need to learn the hard way, and you have to let them hopefully fail fast, and you give them some helpful tips. But if you say too much, then it hurts their ego, and they must know better than you because they're the supervisor or in charge of something. So it's an interesting thing to manage upwards, as it were, as the phrase goes. So you manage up
Yeah.
when you're trying to help, but you don't want to step past a line and then make them dig their heels in even harder, and it doesn't go anywhere.
That's a really good point. Never actually thought about it in that scenario of the managing kind of upwards instead of the other way around. Very good point. Rich, so the last question I kind of want to ask you, as a man who has seen a vast amount of technology over your years, what do you think is the next kind of up and coming technologies that's going to surface in the next couple of years?
Well, the easy answer to punt to is agent-based AI. I think people are worried about it taking everybody's jobs, but or taking over the world and becoming Skynet or something. But
Yep.
I really think it's going to be the next version of a dishwasher, which is to say a labor-saving device that will help people jumpstart through tasks. And it will be very interesting because it will dynamically, at some point, I'm not gonna predict or say that it'll become self-aware. Although that would be one of those cool sci-fi things or scary sci-fi things, I'm not sure what, but it will be smart enough to will have accrued enough information about the world, AI as a general thing, to know how to go and pick up instructions to then dynamically create another agent. So there'll be an agent building another agent to complete a whole series of tasks that are custom to your needs. And so I think we're more likely to go towards a George Jetson world where your job is to do quality control and push a button and give some basic instructions as oversight, And we will get a lot more done as a society by letting things that don't have a physical manifestation just be handled in ways we can barely imagine today, and where we can free up. We already do robotics really well, like assembly line, like for cars or whatever, where robots build things. Um, that might become more advanced too. Robots are easy because it's this exact same thing every single time. AI is different because it's got to be flexible to any situation. So we'll get through this era of things that can be digital, then it will encroach on things that are physical, and maybe we'll get to a place where we just have food and energy abundance for everybody. We can live in a Star Trek world where people don't really have to go hungry, and they do have jobs because they want to challenge themselves as humans. My brother works. His wife is an executive and makes a really good living. He works because he wants to have a career. He makes good money too, but I mean, he just wants to have the satisfaction of growth, personal growth. So he has a career, and he also spends a lot of time with his kids. So that he gets to balance that out as a choice. But he doesn't have to work. He wants to work. And I think that's where we're going to go with AI. We're still going to want to work because we want to feel useful as people. So I think AI is the easy answer. I think AI will also help us manifest the best practices that we all have known for years and failed to execute because it's hard, or we're busy, or we're understaffed, or we're lazy, or all kinds of reasons. So we'll get a lot better at things we already knew should be done, or kind of like put our fingers in our ears and la la la. We don't want to
Yep.
hear it,
Yep.
but still the reality is there's best practices, and I think we're going to get better at all that stuff. And companies are going to have like awareness, like their awareness raised, in ways they had no idea they could achieve, and it will no longer be technology will no longer be such a cost center because they will realize how it can drive their success in business and revenue and things they don't think about today. Again, a long answer. So sorry.
Oh, great answer. I agree with you exactly kind of where it's at. And I think we're on the cutting edge of kind of the framework and the groundwork of AI. I don't necessarily know if it's something actually companies should like seriously start looking at today. Otherwise, they're kind of going to be left behind when, like, as the agents and start coming across. I just have that little lab that I told you that I made with a couple open source things that has operators that kind of surfs Facebook Marketplace to put bids on certain things just to kind of tinker it to see how it works. But you think of that in a business setting of having something maybe monitoring that, maybe like a support queue or an email list or something to be able to reply back to a customer, get more information, and then, get the fine tune information before it goes to the hand of the technology guy who actually supposed to fix whatever it is that the problem is. There's a lot of use cases that you can go with. I like AI because I think it also unleashes the creativity of technology, which I don't think it's hard to be creative in a technology space, especially when things are so kind of mostly strict, and to be able to kind of adjust, have a little creativity, be able to innovate with certain things. I think AI is a place where it's going in the future.
There's a cautionary moment to that too, though, because we already suffer with the problem of companies trying to get to market as fast as they can.
Absolutely.
And then what happens is they skip through best practices and security sometimes altogether, which is, a choice. But the problem is then they market their solution, and companies sign up for it, and they're feeding their data to it. And that data is now a whole new level of, I have no idea where that data went in the cloud and how it's secured, if at all. And there are going to be companies that suffer breaches, and then it's going to be on the news. Oh, this AI company had a big breach, and people are going to wake up and go, oh my gosh, I've been using this service for a long time, and they've got all my data, and or maybe whether it's that company or just another adjacent company.
Yep.
Because so we're going to have a lot of growing pains, is what I'm saying. And you need to do due diligence before you sign up for anything AI, even writing things. And I'm not I'm going to use Grammarly as an example. I'm not saying at all that they're bad. I'm simply just saying it's something everybody knows. That's an AI tool now. It's no longer just a basic grammar check tool. And where is your data? When you have it draft an email for you, or when you're using any of these other chat programs, where's that data going? So you need to have policies about how you do it. You should not say, I know I'm not going to use AI, but you should think about how you're using AI and what you're feeding into it. Can you substitute in place markers for sensitive names, like code names, put code names in, or a placeholder? Some of them support like a little variable placeholder, and you can keep the context of your refining of your document without putting that sensitive stuff in that cloud. So anyway, lots to think through, but I think it's exciting, but you gotta be careful.
Agreed. Well, Rich, we're coming up on time. I want to, again, thank you. Much appreciated for your time, sir, and to telling your story. I greatly appreciate you taking out, giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Thanks, it was fun.